Hello, I'm going to talk today about a matter of life and death. I think that the whole of this thing that we call life is a bit of a mystery, really. And certainly the thing that we call death is a mystery. We think that we know life because we're alive and living it, and we think that death is unknown because we don't know anything about it. We don't know what happens when it comes. And maybe many of us are just too engaged with life, too busy with life to want to even bring the thought of death into our consciousness. Or maybe it's just too scary. We don't want to have to recognize that actually we too will die at one point. It's not just something which happens to somebody else. Maybe we can easily think that in relation to COVID-19. Oh, that's something that other people have got, other people have died from. Not everyone dies from it, but it's all over there. It's somebody else. It's not us. But we have to wake up to the idea that, well, any one of us could catch COVID-19, whether we die or not is another unknown factor. But actually, this uncertainty about death is with us all the time anyway, even before COVID-19. COVID-19 is not the only cause of death. I think I've been aware of death for a long time, since I was quite young. One death I remember in particular was the death of my piano teacher when I was a teenager. I was 17 when she died. And she had given me 5 years of piano lessons free because she knew that my parents couldn't afford it. And as well as teaching me piano, she didn't just teach me the techniques, but she taught me a love of music and a love of harmony. So I was very grateful for that experience, and that really has affected my whole life. And at the time of her death, I was too young to understand what had happened to her, and I was also too immature to be able to deal with the feelings that arose in me. So to a large extent, those feelings I just blocked off. So the starting point of this short talk was the title that I just mentioned, A Matter of Life and Death. But it was also sparked off by the thought I had recently, which was that Buddhism, first of all, taught me how to live, and then it taught me how to die. Well, not that it has taught me those things, but more that those lessons that the Dharma is trying to teach me are still ongoing processes. Through knowledge of the Dharma, I've been learning how to live my life, in a more positive and integrated way, a more ethical way. And also through my knowledge of the Dharma and my practice of the Dharma, I've at least begun the process of learning how to die. When I say learning how to die, I don't mean that I can control the circumstances of my death, because of course that's not possible. I don't know the circumstances of my death. I don't know what kind of state I will be in. But what I feel is that the Dharma is giving me some tools with which to prepare for the event of my death, however it might occur. When I first came to Buddhism, it was through meditation. I'd heard about meditation, and I had the idea that meditation would help me to live in a better way. In the sense, I think, in the sense that I felt my life was a mess, and I didn't know what to do with my life. I didn't know what to make of life. I didn't really like life very much, or I didn't like the society that I found myself in. I found it oppressive. And I just wanted a way of being able to deal with that, where it didn't get me down so much. It didn't lead me to despair. So, to some extent, well, meditation did help very much in that. It did give me something which I could learn to rely on as a resource I could go to help bring about some kind of level-headedness, perhaps you could say, some evenness, some kind of balance, where I wasn't always swinging between depression or despair on the one hand and elation or excitement about life on the other hand. It helped me just to bring about some equanimity. But as I went through this process, as I learned more and more about meditation and Buddhism through practice and through sharing experiences with other people, I began to realize that actually there was much more to Buddhist practice than just learning how to live my life without being overwhelmed by it. And one thing I realized gradually was that in order to live my life without being overwhelmed by it, I had to learn to bring death into my consciousness and also learn not to be overwhelmed by I was going to say the possibility of my death, but I mean really the certainty of my death, don't I? Let's be honest. I had to learn to be okay with the prospect of my inevitable death. So in terms of teaching, the Dharma tells me that everything is conditioned, that everything arises in dependence on causes, and that when those causes, those conditions cease to be, then life will cease to be. Whatever is born will eventually die. Whatever comes into being will eventually cease to be. That's true of our thoughts. They arise and they disappear. It's true of our moods, our emotions. They arise, then they disappear. It's true of things which happen in the world around us. The seasons, new plants, new growth arises at the due time, and then when its time is up, that plant, that new growth decays, declines, disappears. It's true with political movements, political leaders. They arise, they come to power, they have their time, and then they disappear. It's true of buildings. We build buildings. They have their time, and then they're knocked down, or they fall down, or they just decay into ruin. So the Dharma taught me all of this, taught me to see impermanence all around. And the Dharma also taught me that because of impermanence, because of the changing nature of everything, that nothing has what we could call an inherent existence, a lasting, definite, fixed being which endures whatever happens around it. There's no such thing as that. And I went into this in some depth when I did my series of short talks fairly recently called Who Do You Think You Are? And I did 3 talks on that topic, which really just go to show that there is nothing that we can cling on to, that we can call a self. Nothing that we can say really is me, is myself. So when we realise all this, we realise that, well, not we realise, but we actually go through an experience which we could call spiritual death. We recognise that there is nothing to hold on to and that everything is changing, that ultimately there is no such thing as myself, there is no such thing as Bodhivajra. I'm really just a provisional or temporary manifestation. So we have to learn about spiritual death, and we have to be prepared to go through this process of spiritual death. And what we find then is that we go through this spiritual death, but actually nothing actually dies in a sense. Well, it does. Our sense of ourself dies, or reduces or changes. But actually with spiritual death there comes spiritual rebirth, which also is just really part of the process. It's not that some new fixed being comes into being, and it's not that whatever it was that seemed to die actually is rejuvenated. It's not like that. It's just a process that we go through of continual change. We go through the process of what we can call spiritual death and the process of spiritual rebirth. And we don't know how that rebirth is going to take shape. We don't know what it's going to consist of, really. But all we can really know is that it will consist of whatever karmic influences we've generated in this life. So I'm running out of time now. There's much more that could be said on the matter of life and death, but this is just a short way of bringing it all into awareness, bringing in the mystery of life and death, the illusory nature of life and death, and the passing nature of absolutely everything.